Hello, and welcome to another episode of Just Scare Us Already, the podcast where we discuss horror movies, both old and new, give our opinions, and continue to search for a movie that will scare us. I'm your host, Cheyenne, with my co host, Dave.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed our previous episode as we gear up for more new horror films to come out in the next few weeks.
If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe and follow us on all of our social medias down below. But for now, let's get into it.
All right. So, as Hollywood continues to try to revive the classic horror film monsters, we now have the recent release of Wolfman, a re envisioning of 1941's The Wolfman. Werewolf films fall under the subgenre of monsters, and like most monster films, there are several iterations of werewolf films with varying details and logic. Some films are consistent, and some are just based on what works for the storyline and plot. So, as we continue to dive into the different genres and subgenres of horror films, for this episode, we will review the recently released Wolfman, as well as talk about three of our favorite werewolf movies as well. So, with that being said, let's dive into it and see if the new version of Wolfman was able to scare us. So, Shai, tell us a little bit about Wolfman.
So Wolfman was released on January 17th, 2025, directed by Lee Winnell and written by Lee Winnell and Corbett Tuck, starring Julia Garner, Christopher Abbott, and Matilda Firth. The story is about Blake, a San Francisco father and hopeful writer who inherits his remote childhood home in rural Oregon after his own father vanishes and is presumed dead. With his marriage to his high-powered wife, Charlotte Fraying, Blake persuades her to take a break from the city to visit the property with their young daughter, Ginger. But as the family approaches the farmhouse in the dead of night, they're attacked by an unseen animal and, in a desperate escape, barricade themselves in the home as the creature prowls the perimeters. As the night stretches on, however, Blake begins to behave strangely, transforming into something unrecognizable. Right now, it's sitting at a 53% critic score and a 59% audience score on Rotten Tomato. What did you think of this movie, and do you agree with the score so far?
Well, ordinarily, I know we usually start off with me, but this time I'm going to give you first shot at it.
Okay.
So, tell us what you think.
I think the audience scores are pretty accurate. If anything, maybe a little too high. I probably go more towards the critic score of 53 instead of 59. I thought the movie was dark and loud, which you did warn me about, but it was excruciatingly loud, to be honest. There were parts of it that I did like. I liked the transformation into a werewolf. It was quick, but it was really gruesome. The werewolf itself looked a little wonky, but I understood for the most part what they were trying to go for, of a more humanistic look.
Mhm.
But I saw the twist coming. I don't even know if you could call it a twist, honestly. The moment I saw the house, which I thought going into, and this isn't really a spoiler since it's in the description, but I thought from the trailers that the house was some random deserted house that they found and had to barricade in. So the moment I saw, oh, there's a father and a little boy in the house, I knew where this whole movie was going to be going within literally the first 5 minutes, called the entirety of the movie. There were aspects of it, though, that were kind of cool. So I liked when they showed his POV while he was transforming. I thought that was really cool. I think it was just utilized too many times. I thought a few times was really like, oh, that's a really cool aspect of it, because, again, this isn't a spoiler, but as he's transforming, neither side can understand each other anymore. But we get to see his POV of what he's trying to say and what he's going through this transformation. And I thought that was a really cool aspect. I love seeing the person who's transforming and what they're going through and their horror during this whole thing. But the acting was okay, to be honest. It was a bit of
Yeah,
So what about you?
I've seen a lot of werewolf films throughout the years, and some of them were good, some of them were not. Wolfman was one of those that was not. I give the filmmakers credit for trying to reinvent the typical werewolf film. and avoid some of the hokey cliches, like the
Mm-hmm.
full wolf looking creatures, that take several minutes to transform into on the first change and then seconds throughout the rest of the film. So I'm glad they stayed away from that and from the Build-A-Bear looking, masks and whatnot. A lot of those hokey werewolf films that just look like,
Yeah.
big stuffed animals. But yeah, the story felt choppy and rushed, and extremely predictable. And I agree with you. The character development was lackluster, and the performances by the three main characters were not good at all. So I felt
Mm-hmm.
nothing for any of these characters. I didn't feel anything for the wife. I didn't feel anything for the husband that was changing. And sadly, there are kid actors who do a really good job. Unfortunately, this young lady did not. She was not believable at all.
No,
So,
and I know she's a good actress. I've seen her in other things, but this one, I don't know. They
hmm
played her so young sounding, despite how old she looked,
hmm
that all of
hmm
her whining made me. I honestly, if I was the mother, I would have hit her a few times. She was aggravatingly annoying. And then I'm sorry, but that mom also sucks. I get that that's like kind of the point was that she doesn't have a relationship with her daughter. But if
hmm
my husband is transforming and I can't understand him and he's to the point where I don't want to give a spoiler. So this is a little spoiler. So I'll put in a time or we'll put in a timestamp. But if my husband was biting his own flesh, I would not then walk away and leave my daughter alone with him while I go to the basement to find some keys. That part shocked me to no end that she just was like, okay, well, you stay here. I'm going to go away. And
Yeah.
whatever happens, happens.
Right. Right. Or I'm gonna go take care of this and just stay here with your father. He'll watch you while he's chewing on his
Exactly.
arm. Yeah. Yeah. No.
Absurd.
I totally agree. A lot of the scenes were eye rolling, and I don't know. It's just I know I mentioned this in our Nosferatu episode about the casting and how I felt that Nicholas Hoult looked too young for the role that he was cast
Julia
in.
Garner looked too young.
Yeah, she looked more like an older sister than a mother.
Yeah.
I just couldn't accept her as, especially a girl that looked that old. I was like, she doesn't look old enough to have a daughter that old.
Yeah, and
So
the fact that Christopher Abbott looked old, like he looked
right,
30, 40-ish. So
yeah.
seeing them, I was just like, ew.
I
And
mean,
again, it's not
God,
her fault. I know she's
yeah,
older, but
yeah,
play to
exactly.
your strengths. You look young. Continue to play. She was good in We Are What We Are, or We Are What We Eat, the
We
cannibal
are what
one.
we are. What we are. Yeah.
Yeah, she was good in that one, and she played, the sister in it. And I think if she
hmm
continues to play sister roles, it's more believable. But as a mother, and that old of a mother, it
Yeah.
just was
Yeah.
not believable
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Exactly. I just couldn't. I mean, God bless her if if she's lucky enough to be 30 and look like
Yeah.
17. Hey, good for you. Good for you. You got that Dick Clark disease, but yeah, it just didn't work. I couldn't take her seriously as a mother. Um, and the whole thing behind trying to develop the story, here's a couple that their relationship is struggling, apparently, and they really don't dive into it, that there's some friction because he's kind of between jobs, as a writer,
Hmm.
and she's also a writer, but she works for a magazine. So there's that friction there, and how she feels like the daughter doesn't like her because she spends more time with the father. But it never really developed in anything that I cared about. Again,
Yeah.
by midway through the movie, I didn't feel anything for any of the characters.
Yeah, I agree. It was lackluster, and it took so long to get to the werewolf part and the house part.
hmm
Like that beginning part was so long between him and his father, and then developing the family relationship. I just felt like it wasn't necessary. They could have just cut off some and then they were trying to say like, oh, he has anger issues already, which I don't think really showcased
No,
and was
not at all.
unnecessary. I think they really could have just jumped from him and his dad to him finding out his dad was presumed dead
Right.
and taken out a good chunk of it, and then just going to the house. Like there was just too many parts where it was unnecessary. The creepy guy when they get to the Oregon area,
Hmm.
um, who knew him but was sketching out the family, unnecessary. It didn't play into anything at all. Doesn't come back around to do anything. So there was just a lot of aspects that I felt like they wanted to explore and just didn't have the time or didn't have the skill to write it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't think a lot of the aspects of it and the character stuff of them having a bad relationship, I don't think any of that was necessary, especially for where the story goes.
Right. And to be honest, it the side story with him and his father and him and his daughter. So yeah, I felt like this movie was kind of becoming or started wanted to start off as I originally thought it was, which was another metaphor for uh, fathers that have anger issues and
Uh
child
huh.
abuse, kind of based, similar to the Beast Within, where
Yeah.
it all just seemed like a metaphor. So it kind of seemed like it was going in that direction where it's like, he yells at the daughter and he's like, oh, I don't want to be that person, I don't want to be like my father. And then later on in the movie it's mentioned again, you're not your father, blah blah blah. So I was just kind of like, yeah, it seemed like they also kind of wanted to use it as a metaphor, the beast within, the
Mm-hmm.
monster in the family kind of thing. So yeah, but it didn't work.
Yeah, I think it just wasn't necessary at all. Like it's not like the Beast Within. It's not him changing because he's already kind of an abusive man. Like
Hmm.
he's changing. He has an infection. Like it wasn't necessary for him to have this sort of anger issue. It wasn't necessary for him to have a bad relationship with his wife because throughout the rest of the movie, she for the most part cares about him.
Hmm.
The daughter never seems to genuinely dislike her mom, and the mom never really seems to not handle the daughter well, other than obviously
Right.
making stupid choices, which I think was writing more than character.
Right.
She seems to give a care about her kid. Her kid seems to be comfortable. Then the kid never says like, Give me to daddy, I don't
Right.
want you." So I just felt like that storyline was genuinely unnecessary. They just could have been a fine family
Yeah.
who go through a
Yeah.
horrible situation. So overall, though, I would give this. I don't know. I would give this a lukewarm meh
Okay.
because I think that there were aspects of it I genuinely liked. I really did like when they showed his POV. And the
Hmm.
first time it switched between his POV and their POV, that was really well done. It was very cool. And I thought
Hmm.
that the design was interesting. The makeup was really great. And I think that if you are someone who's easily scared by loud noises, this movie might scare you. For
Hmm.
me, it did not. But as I will say, going into our top three or werewolf movies, I don't think I like werewolf movies.
Yeah.
I don't think I like them. So I'm also a little biased that I genuinely just don't really enjoy these kind of monsters. So I'm going to give it a lukewarm Matt. I think there are people who would enjoy it, but it's not great
Hmm.
or good. It's it's not horrible though.
Right. Yeah, I think I would have to disagree a little bit. I think the director did a better job with the Invisible Man, but
Yeah, for sure.
I think he missed his mark with Wolfman. I thought overall the film felt rushed, and aside from a couple of interesting effects, like you mentioned, the POV effect that was pretty cool. I did not like this film at all. I didn't find anything redeemable about it. At a lot of points, I was more annoyed with the loud noise than anything else.
Um,
And I get it. Nowadays, in a lot of movie multiplexes and whatnot, they have all these new Dolby, super Dolby, sound systems and whatnot. So everything is super loud. But this was trying to be loud to be scary, and for me, like I said, it became more annoying. So with that being said, I'd have to say I give Wolfman a thumbs down, Kitty. Did not like it. Can't recommend it. I don't even think I would waste my time on streaming.
Well, that's our opinions on it. I mean, yes, I'm leaning more towards a thumbs down, but I'm gonna give it a lukewarm meh. Because I think that
Okay.
there are people who might enjoy it, especially people who maybe do like the werewolf genre. But yeah, it was very loud. It was unnecessarily loud. The opening part already gave me a headache, and that wasn't even anything meant to be scary. It was just very loud.
Mhm.
So, so yeah. But going into our top werewolf movies, which again was very hard to pick.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, I agree. I use the term favorites loosely because rewatching some of these werewolf movies, uh, I don't think any of them really stand the test of time. uh, they definitely seem hokey and super cliche-ish, and it's just half the time I'm rolling my eyes, but I had to take a step back and said, okay, asking myself the same question with vampire movies. If someone was to ask me what movies would I watch again or would watch with them, that's where I came up with this list. So for me, number three would be 2002's Dog Soldiers, starring Sean Pertwee, Kevin McKidd, and Emma Cleesby, and it's directed by Neil Marshall. So during a routine nighttime training mission in the Scottish Highlands, a small squad of British soldiers expected to rendezvous with a special ops unit instead find a bloody massacre with a sole survivor. The savage attackers of the special ops team return, and the men are rescued by Megan, a zoologist who identifies what haunts them as werewolves. Without transportation and communication, the group is forced to retreat to a farmhouse to wait for the full moon to disappear at dawn. So, this is a British film. It, again, doesn't really stand the test of time, but as far as a action filled movie, it's a good watch. The special effects there really are no special effects. You don't see anyone transforming or anything like that. It's just basically here are these giant werewolves that come crashing through the doors trying to attack these soldiers. So nothing really special there as far as special effects, but just an interesting, good overall action film with werewolves in it. But again, does it stand the test of time? The werewolves kind of look hokey, and I know I keep using that word, but that's the only word I can think of. Yeah, but they look very generic and just look like big guys, in these werewolf masks and whatnot. So
Uh-huh.
again, nothing super special, but if you're looking for something to watch, werewolf related, Dog Soldier is a good film.
That's good to know. I had on my list, but I didn't bother watching it. I watched a lot of werewolf movies, though. So
Hmm.
I'll have to give that one a watch.
All right.
But my number three is a Nordic movie called Viking Wolf from 2022 that can be found on Netflix. It's directed by, I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher most of these names, but directed by Sting Spetsen and starring Liv Jones and Ellie Mueller Osborne.
Okay.
It follows 17-year-old Thale, who has just moved to a small town after her mother gets a new job at the local police station. After a student is brutally killed at a party Thale attends, she becomes a key witness. Was the killer an animal? A wolf? This movie was pretty good. It's a bit slow. It's slower than most werewolf movies, in my opinion, but the werewolf that they do showcase at the beginning is very good looking. It's CGI heavy, but the way that the lighting was done, it looked very good. That scene was pretty um active. It was a good scene. It kind of gives you a bit of a jump scare in it, so there's a little bit of fright. The dubbing was good. The voice acting was good. I watched it dubbed instead of subtitled.
Mhm.
But like I said, it did take a little too long once she's infected. They'll to have her transformation and to get to that point in the movie. It's a lot of the police work and trying to figure out if it's a wolf, and then someone who's an expert in werewolves comes, and it's one of those kind of storylines.
Hmm.
But I did like the way that they did the turning. They had it so that she became more wolf-like, kind of like in Wolfman, where it seems like it's going to be more of a permanent transformation instead of you turn every full moon or whatever, like the original storylines.
Hmm.
But I did think that the last 30 minutes paid off for the movie. That's kind of where it really kind of kicks up and becomes a much more interesting movie than the beginning part of it. But like I said, this was hard for me to choose. So this was my number three of the movies I watched. I watched about like 10 movies. So like Dave, I kind of said, well, which one would be more willing to sit through again?
Hmm.
And I thought this one, I thought the last 30 minutes of it kind of made it worth it to watch. The characters were good. The mom and daughter relationship was well done, enough for the storyline that they were going for. I wouldn't say it's a character driven story because it doesn't really focus too heavily on the characters, but it's definitely like an atmosphere story.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I have seen that one on Netflix, but I haven't watched it. I saw
Yeah.
the trailer for it, and I was just kind of like, eh.
Yeah.
I think I'll skip that one. But
It was going to be that, or it was going to be Skinwalkers, the
okay,
Native American one. It
okay.
was between the two, but that one I felt was a little bit too melodramatic for my
Oh,
liking.
yeah,
But it
yeah.
was it's definitely a 90s or early 2000s
Mhm.
movie.
Yeah, I think I saw Skinwalkers. That one
I
was
think you did.
okay.
It was
Yeah,
I.
yeah.
What's your number two of your werewolf
All right.
flicks?
So for me, my number two and number one and number two are basic. They basically came out only weeks apart. They both
Oh
were
wow.
released in the same year, same month, just a couple weeks apart. But these two movies actually put a lot of these special effects people on the map. Um,
Oh.
Made their careers, and so for me, my number two is the 1981's The Howling, starring Dee Wallace and Christopher Stone, and directed by Joe Dante. So the film is about a Los Angeles television journalist, Karen White, who is traumatized while aiding the police in the arrest of a serial murderer. Uh, After the attack, her doctor recommends that she attend an isolated psychiatric retreat led by Dr. George Wagner. So while Karen is undergoing therapy, her journalist colleague Chris investigates the bizarre circumstances surrounding her encounter with the serial murderer. When his research leads him to suspect a sinister supernatural connection, he begins to fear Karen is in grave danger. So again, this is from 1981. When I saw this film originally, scared the bejesus out of me because the transformation scene in this film alone is worth the watch. It was so original, so uh, eye popping. I mean, it was just in
Uh-huh.
1981. You hadn't really seen anything like that, so it's just like anytime you ask anyone about the Howling, the first thing they say is, "Oh yeah, when that guy turns into a werewolf, man, that freaked me out." So yeah, it definitely stands out as far as that. Story wise, it's campy. Um, the
Yeah.
acting is horrible, but for 1981, that was the way most people act. But it's not a horrible storyline. Um, some of it is again, kind of really come on, you eye rolling. But again, the transformation scene in this film is worth the watch. It's incredible how they did it. So if you do get a chance to watch it, I hope anyone would enjoy that transformation scene that hasn't seen it.
Do you know where it's available?
Um, right now, I actually had to rent it. I had to rent it on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, just
either
checking
either
because I'll
Amazon
have to watch it.
or Fandango, one of mine, but I had to rent it. Yeah.
Okay. Good choice. I was
So
gonna
it's
watch it, but then you sent your list very early. So I just skipped most of the ones that you had on your list that I haven't seen.
Okay.
But my second movie is Howl from 2015. This actually was not on my list of movies to watch. I was on Amazon Prime and it just kind of was recommended after something I watched. So
Hmm.
this was a surprising one for me, but I actually did kind of enjoy it. It was directed by Paul Hyatt and starring Ed Spieler and Holly Weston. It is a British movie as well, and it follows Joe, who hates his job as a ticket checker on a train. Working the late night shift, he is forced to take charge when the train is attacked by a creature. The passengers and crew must band together in order to survive until morning. It felt very much, I wouldn't say Train to Busan, but it's kind of that idea of like it's all set in a train. They're stuck. There's no real escape from this one area. When
Hmm.
they do try to escape, obviously they get attacked by the werewolf outside, who then manages to eventually get into the train. I thought that it was pretty interesting early on. It doesn't start off quick, I wouldn't say, but it doesn't take too long to get into the action part. But the
Okay.
characters themselves are interesting enough that you're willing to watch the movie. A lot of the characters are insufferable. They're meant to be, though. They're meant to be those kind of passengers who just hate. So there's a
Hmm.
jerk. There's a workaholic lady who's just an a-hole. The, slob kid who kind of gets himself into trouble every turn of events. And then two older passengers who are sweethearts, but you kind of have to take care of them the whole time. I thought that the characters do get more likable as they're forced to survive together. I do like those kind of stories where you learn the depths of some of the characters and see them, learning to like each other. And then, of course, you have the a-hole in the group who wants to just survive. And I thought that they did that really well.
Hmm.
You never, it never felt too much of a cliche. It was definitely a cliche overall of a story, but it never felt like you were just like, oh, here we go. Then this part, then that part. The con of the movie, though, is that the creature design is horrible. I thought the creatures when they show I was really hoping they wouldn't show them too often because they
Hmm.
do a good job of like, an arm here, some teeth here, but then they really show the monster and it's god awful. It's so so bad looking, but the movie itself was good. It held up it held up enough that I enjoyed the movie as a whole. I enjoyed where it went, even though the ending was cliche. I still thought that it did a good job.
Hmm.
But yeah, the design is one downfall. When they show it, I just kind of went, "Oh no, that's so bad." But yeah, it's a good watch overall. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. I think it's just on normal Prime. It wasn't on like any subscription channel.
Okay.
So yeah, if you get a chance, you should watch it. I thought, like I said, I thought all the actors in it were good. The transformation of one of the characters was slow but well done. It was a little annoying though because it wasn't consistent. One person turned very slowly and one person turned almost instantaneously. So there's some of that where it's kind of based off of what they need for the storyline. But altogether, I thought that it was a good character story of this guy who wants to be a supervisor but doesn't get the job and hates his job. Kind of being forced to take action and take lead and choose whether or not he wants to survive on his own or actually try to help other people. But yeah, so overall, I thought this one was definitely one I would rewatch, probably with friends and stuff. But yeah, the design of the werewolf when they show that it's awful. It's definitely not like Dave is holding his top two movies. This one, I don't think anyone who worked on that CGI or costume got any future from it.
Yeah, I did see the trailer for that one, and that was another one where I was tempted to watch it, but then I was like, nah, I'll skip it.
That's pretty good. It's decent. I wouldn't say it's great,
Okay,
but it's decent.
I have to check it
It's not
out.
Train to Busan.
Right,
I shouldn't have compared the two, but it's just its idea of being stuck on a train.
right. All right. So my
But
number
what is your
one.
number one?
Hmm. Well, like I mentioned earlier, my number one, number two were released weeks apart back in 1981. The Howling was released on April 3rd, 1981. This film was released on April 21st,
Wow.
1981, and it's An American Werewolf in London. So this one appeared as number one on a lot of lists, and again, I think it's a film that definitely put the special effects and makeup artists on the map. So the film stars David Naughton, Jenny Gutter, and Kevin Dunn. Um, I'm sorry, Griffin Dunn. I don't know why I said Kevin Dunn, Griffin Dunn. And it's directed by John Landis. So the story is about two American college students, David and Jack, and they're backpacking their way through Britain when a large wolf attacks them. David survives with a bite, but Jack is brutally killed. As David heals in the hospital, he's plagued by violent nightmares of his mutilated friend, who warns him that he is becoming a werewolf. When David discovers the horrible truth, he contemplates committing suicide before the next full moon, which causes him to transform from man to monstrous beast. So, again, the transformation scene in this film was remarkable. It's kind of similar to the transformation in The Howling, just done a little bit better because it's done in bright light, where the
Oh.
transformation in Howling is done kind of in the dark. So there's you're only getting kind of shadows and silhouettes of the transformation, where this one's done in a bright, living room. So you actually see the transformation happening. Um, does it stand the test of time? Probably not. When you watch it now, it kind of looks, corny, but
Uh-huh.
you know, 1981, people hadn't seen anything like it, so that transformation scene was phenomenal. The story's decent. You know, a lot of people who fresh out of college or out of high school before they go to college, they want to backpack through Europe and whatnot. So you get into these small little British and Irish towns where they tell you to, stay away from the moors and up this road and don't go here and don't go there because of all the myths of
Mhm.
creatures and whatnot. So, it kind of plays on that whole story. And then you get the conflict that he's having that, oh no, I'm actually a werewolf. So the only thing I can do is kill myself, but he falls in love with a nurse and he wants to live, but he also doesn't want to be this creature. So it's a good watch. It has some funny moments. John Landis, I don't know if you've ever seen any of his movies, but
I don't think
he
so.
like Ghostbusters and stuff. So he does a lot of horror comedy kind of things. So it does
Mhm.
have some moments in it. It's a good watch. It's a classic, 1981. I think if any you ask anybody, what's their favorite werewolf movie, that's probably one that'll pop up in their head right away is American Werewolf in London.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that on a lot of lists, so it
Hmm.
must be good. Well,
Yeah,
good.
it again, it doesn't stand the test of time, but it's a good watch overall.
Which one do you remember was more popular since they both came out so close together?
American Werewolf in London definitely was more of a box office hit. I think Howling it did okay, but it was more of a cult classic. I think
Oh, okay.
after years later, a lot of people, like I said, would refer to that transformation scene, which made it popular.
Oh, good to know. Well, my number one
Hmm.
is one that I actually started numerous times before this and kept turning off. So I'm
Okay.
actually happy I sat through it. I'm actually happy I sat through it though this time because it is The Cursed or Eight for Silver, depending on where you look for it. I found it more as The Cursed, but
Okay.
if you're Googling it, it comes out as Eight for Silver from 2021. Yeah, you can find this one on Hulu. It's directed by Sean Ellis and starring Boyd Holbrook, Kelly Riley, and Alistair Petrie. It's set in the 1800s when a brutal land baron massacres a gypsy clan, claiming the land for himself. The victims place a curse that will bring monstrous consequences to his village. I turned this off numerous times only because it's set in the 1800s or 1700s, and
Hmm.
I tend to get bored with those kind of movies because they talk. a lot. And so the beginning part's a bit slow. They massacred the gypsies, which was a pretty gruesome scene, especially with what they do with one of the characters. And then it kind of piddles a little bit, and that's when I was like, oh, I'm bored of this movie. I'm turning it off. But I sat there this time, and actually, it's a very good movie. Once they get into the curse part, because basically the curse from the gypsies is that everyone's going to have these nightmares until someone unleashes the beast, which is the silver teeth that turn the person into a werewolf.
Mhm.
And the transformation in this one is really interesting. They never showcase the transformation, but this isn't a big spoiler. When they kill the person who's a werewolf, it's like they're wrapped inside of the werewolf's body. So it was
Okay.
really interesting to see that because it was like these vines that would cover the person and then they would get transformed. And then once they were killed, it like was as if it was like a cocoon on them. It's really interesting. It's a cool take on a werewolf movie.
Hmm.
I thought that aspects of it were really good. That part was really cool. The characters in it were well acted. I thought all the actors, including the children actors, were good. Um, there's a bit of a cheesy thing that's happening in it. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but it sort of starts with like the future showcasing a character, and
Okay.
then as you watch the movie you realize who that character is later on, and it's a little bit of a cheesy ending and a little hokey, but I thought that overall when it's set in the past, that part of the movie was really cool. Seeing the guilt through the land baron who's lost his son and is possibly going to lose the rest of his family because of a curse he brought about was it was interesting. Alistair does a really good job of playing that role of playing such a gross person who would do something like that, but then having all this guilt filling him as they're trying to hunt these werewolves. Overall, I thought the movie was well done. The graphics in it are good. I don't remember if I liked the character, if I liked the werewolf design too much. I think the werewolf itself wasn't that great, but like I said, once they kill it, the idea that they have of it being wrapped around them, I thought that was really interesting. I like to see new takes in movies, so that part was cool. So yeah, overall, I think this one's worth the watch. If you get a chance to watch it on Hulu, I think it's well done enough, but it does have a few slow parts. But towards the end, it does ramp up a lot when a lot of people are getting cursed.
Hmm. Yeah, I have watched that one. I
Oh, did
probably
you?
watched it a couple years ago. So yeah, I again, I thought that one was kind of slow too.
Yeah.
I kind of lost interest in it. So I didn't even remember that was a werewolf movie.
if you if you pay attention, it's pretty good. I'm
Mm,
definitely someone who does have a tendency to stop paying attention if I find a movie boring enough.
mm,
And then when I do pay attention the second time, I think that the movie is better.
okay.
So
Yeah, I'll have to
I
give it a
might have just gone
rewatch.
into actually this was the last werewolf movie I watched. So I might have also just been so tired of werewolf movies that I picked one that I was like, this is decently good. So be aware, my top three I'm not in love with. None of these
Mm.
movies are ones that I would choose to watch. But if someone was like, you have to watch a werewolf movie, these are the three I would choose. I really don't like the werewolf movies. I don't know why. None of them I liked. All of the movies I watched, which I watched like 10 of them, none of them held my interest. None of them were that good. I know
Maybe you
you
should
have
have
a
did
few
your worst
dishonors.
three. Maybe you should have
I
did
know
your
I
worst
really
three.
should have. But yeah, so if you want to talk about your dishonorable mentions, feel
Oh
free. Mine would be
yeah.
a long list.
Well, yeah, I definitely have two that I have to call out as dishonorable mentions. And like you had mentioned about An American Werewolf in London, about it being on a lot of lists. This film was on just about every list that I saw, and I had never watched it before, so I'm like, okay, it's on every list, at least in the top 5. So I'm like, I gotta watch it. And that movie was 2000's Ginger Snaps, starring Catherine Isabel and Emily Perkins, and directed by John Fawcett. This movie was horrible. This had to be the worst werewolf movie I ever saw in my life. And for it to be in the top 5 on just about every list, I don't get it. I just do not get it. It felt like a after school special
Yeah.
that tied in uh don't have sex and you're gonna get a disease, and the disease is you're gonna be a werewolf.
Yeah,
I
it's
was
not
like,
I don't get it either. It's not a great movie.
no, and for it
And I did not like the acting.
to have two sequels, that's what dumbfounds me. I'm like, what?
Well, I was surprised Terrifier has 2 sequels.
Oh, tell me about it. But I don't want to offend the Terrifier fans, but yeah,
Yeah.
this
No, it's
Ginger
great.
Snaps was, oh wow, come on. And my second dishonorable mention goes to 2005's Cursed, not to be mistaken with your film, The Cursed. This
Yeah,
one's
no, Curse was
yeah,
bad.
this one stars Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg, and it's directed by Wes Craven, which in fact is also written by Kevin Williamson, and the two of them both did Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4 together.
Oh, wow.
So that's probably why if you watch the film Cursed, you think it was Scream.
Yeah.
It's filmed in the exact same way. The dialogue is the exact same thing. I was like, they what did they do? Just got bored with Scream and said, "Hey, let's make a werewolf movie, but we'll
Probably.
do it just like Scream since it's working so well. The formula's working so well, so let's do a werewolf movie." It was horrible. That was a bad one too. I sat through it and just I was shaking my head the whole time. I was just like, this is probably a really bad, but not as bad as Ginger Snaps. Definitely not as bad as Ginger
No.
Snaps.
I did start The Cursed, and then you texted me your list, and you had your dishonorable mentions, and I said, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna turn this one off then," because I wasn't liking it to begin with, but I was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna sit through it," because I like Christina Ricci, so I
Mm,
wanted to watch it. I wanted to like it, but yeah. So thank you for saving me some time. My
oh,
one dishonorable mention that I will put on the list is
okay.
Bloodthirsty. This movie was weird and creepy, and it's about a girl who's a musician who is having these nightmares of wanting to eat blood. She's a foster kid. She gets hired by some music guy to come and do some music in his studio in this foresty area, and he's a creep the whole time. I thought he wanted to have sex with her. Huge spoiler. I don't think you should watch it, so I don't care. I'm not going to put a spoiler alert, but he turns out to be her dad, and
Oh
she's like
wow.
biologically a werewolf, and so it was badly done. It was creepy. It never got anywhere at all. So god awful movie. Don't sit through it. Bad acting too. That it was cheap. I'm not gonna say it was Gravitas Venturis, but I think it
Oh,
was.
okay.
You, based off my memory of how it looked, I'm pretty sure it was a Gravitas movie, but don't waste your time. It's not good. So those are our top 3 and 3 dishonorable mentions and our opinion on Wolfman. I think we have come to the consensus that we are not werewolf people. So
Yeah,
hopefully, though,
exactly.
maybe at some point a movie will come out that will be a werewolf movie that will manage to scare us.
Paris.
But until then, we will keep watching some of the new movies coming out because there are a ton happening late January, early February. So fingers crossed we find something that can finally scare us. But until then, we hope to see you guys in the next episode. Go ahead and give us a like and subscribe, and put down in the comments below if there is a werewolf movie that you think either of us might actually like that we just didn't stumble upon. But until then, we will see you next week.
All right. Bye everyone.
Bye.